Oh, the one,
The one you're going to read?
Gentlemen, Scholars, and Scoundrels.
Okay.
Let's see what's happening here. Yeah, there we go. I just want to at least do it on one of them. That way, freaking it's a safe copy and stories and stuff. I don't really care where, just as long as... It seems to be... Yep, it is completely dead on there. So yeah. You still there?
I'm still here.
Okay.
Are you still getting fixed?
Yeah, I'm doing it now.
Not distracting you.
Oh, I'm doing it now. It should be good to go here in a second.
Okay.
Hopefully. Oh, wow. There we go. Okay, everything should be ready to go, hopefully.
Okay, yay.
Yeah.
And 5 minutes to spare.
Okay, and I even got the book set up. Hopefully I can read it good. I got it all anchored up, and I have to bend my arm around the side of the book so that I can use the mouse, though. So.
Oh, okay. But you shouldn't need to use the mouse while you're reading.
Hopefully. Now the mouse pad's under the book. Leave that door open. It's freaking hot in here.
Yes.
The air conditioner, we have a window unit, and it ended up breaking down on me.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's pretty much up. Okay. Yeah.
So I have to go quite promptly in an hour.
Okay.
Because I've got to do a recording with Satori D.
All right.
So we'll just start. We'll read, and at 2 o'clock I'll just have to ditch.
All right. So wait, 19. Okay, so from 19 to page 24, and then I'll end it. That way we can just get that amount of time on it. So.
All right. Acrylate.
I used my old bill envelope instead.
Oh yes. Yeah.
Phew, I got envelopes for book dividers. I'm so ghetto. That's how we roll up here.
My mum used to do that all my life. I just thought it was normal. I thought that was just what people did.
Well, I mean, I can't believe I said that out loud. I'll just be honest. It's like,
maybe we really get Maybe that's
got it. So, and like I said, I'll hit record. I'll get everything recorded just for backup. I've got those other two that I was a part
Thank
of,
you.
but I haven't used them for anything. So if you need them, just let me know.
Okay, thanks. They seem okay. They seem everything, but yeah, it's great that you're doing backup. It really is awesome.
So
Okay.
I should be ready. So
Okay. All right, let's do it then. Where's my screen? Here we go. Right. Start streaming. Manage broadcast. Select broadcast. Select broadcast and start streaming. Actually, I'll just do the broadcast and we can waste a few seconds and get closer to the hour because, you know. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm gonna do it. Here we go. Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining Roger and I again. Let me pop over to here. Right. Okay. We're back again reading old books. As you can see from the description, the one that I'm reading is The Yellow Man Looks On by Hedley A. Chilvers, and Roger is reading from Gentlemen, Scholars and Scoundrels by, I've forgotten, Roger, what's his name? I just looked at it and now I've forgotten it. Henry Knowles.
Horace Knowles.
Horace Knowles. Okay. Awesome. So thanks for joining me, Roger. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Getting through the heat spell we're having. Other than that, doing all right.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. So last week, I randomly ended up in the middle of a chapter. We had just read about the Scummans and how Mrs. Scumman handed the flag back in. And now we're going to just jump straight into the rest of the chapter and off we go. So, but wars cost money, and the Republic was soon in grave financial difficulty. Native trouble broke out in the Zoutpansberg in 1864, and there was no money to finance a campaign. Eventually, indeed, the great Zoutpansberg district was abandoned, only one village remaining in possession of the Boers. It was then that Kruger, as Commandant General of the Republic, learned the lesson of the power of money. Money. Untold millions lay on their border, barely out of their reach. The burghers beheld with growing bitterness their own increasing poverty and the vast wealth of the diamond fields. The natives, too, were becoming still more restless, because the Kita Ward freed such tribes as the Bechuanas and the Koranas from Boer jurisdiction, and inspired others with a desire for freedom themselves. The white man's failure to hold the Zoutpansberg increased that disposition. In the district of Christiana, almost brought matters to a head one day. He erected a reed hut on a position to which the local Landrost objected. "You must remove it," the Landrost said. He was imprisoned in a territory not belonging to the Republic. Sir Henry Berkeley at once wrote to President Burgers, the canteen keeper, on the accused, and in the end, Howe on the was holding steadfast oration. "Will you youths of England make your country again a royal throne of kings? a sceptred isle for all the world, a source of light, a centre of peace. This is what England must either do or perish. She must found colonies as fast and as far as she is able, formed of her most energetic and worthiest men, seizing any peaceful, fruitful waste ground that she can, and thereby teaching her colonists fidelity to their country. Rhodes made these words the motive of his life. Chapter 7. How a fearless man founded Fort Burgers. Kruger, meanwhile, rode on steadily towards the presidency, and, strangely enough, the rebellious tribesmen helped him there. From all parts came rumors of tribal disturbances, of Boer farms raided by blacks, of encroachments by the chiefs. Sekhukhune on the eastern frontier, and Cetewayo, king of Zululand, on the southeast, both arming themselves for war against the white man. President Thomas Burgers, the visionary ex-parson and politician who had succeeded Pretorius in 1872, decided to take the field against Sekhukhune. In doing so, he ignored the advice of those who felt that Commandant Kruger, with his long experience of native warfare, should go instead. The campaign proved to be the culmination of a long series of blunders. For instance, Burgers, just returned from Europe to raise a loan to construct a railway from the Transvaal to Lorenzo Marx, a loan against the security of Republican farmers, had already spent the loan on railway material in Belgium, and he had incurred liability on a rail survey. He found, when he landed in Cape Town, that he had not even enough to pay the salary of the engineer, much less for the actual construction of the line. It was a shocking mess. Oops, can't turn the page. It was a shocking mess, and one which loaded an already bankrupt state with yet heavier liabilities. His next mistake was to move against Sekhukhune. He walked about all night, deciding whether he or Kruger should lead the commando, said the late Fred Struben, his then aide-de-camp. He rode forth eventually at the head of a distrustful force. They disliked his advanced thinking in matters of religion. They feared that they were under the leadership of a godless commandant. So Burgers moved against Sekhukhune. He found himself operating amongst great mountains, fortified and almost inaccessible. And yet, his operations were at first successful. The Boers inflicted heavy casualties on the enemy and dislodged him from one mountain, killing a chief. Then came sudden panic. "Haste to!" which means go home, shouted the commandos, scrambling down the rocky slopes and galloping away. "Stop! Stop!" cried Burgers, standing there bareheaded in the sun, his long auburn beard blowing in the wind. "Stop, in God's name, before you dishonor me!" But nothing would stop them. Burgers' great commando fled and soon put many miles between itself and Sekukuni's stronghold. Now there had been in Berger's force the young Prussian Captain von Sickelmann, the favorite nephew of General Manteuffel. He had been wounded in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to 71 and decorated at Wissembourg with the Iron Cross. Many stories are told of his intrepidity. Fred Struben used to relate how, when advancing through a wild ravine him from behind rocky cover, the Prussian coolly began to stalk him from rock to rock. At the same time, another of Berger's men saw the native and took aim at him. Unfortunately, this second stalker had so little control of himself that his shot splattered round the rocks in dangerous proximity to von Schickelmann. "By God, sir!" yelled the Prussian, turning around. "If you don't stop firing, I'll put a bullet through you." Then he went on. The native once more peered stealthily over the rock. Schickelmann fired at close range and blew the man's head off. Von Schickelmann was furious with the great commando for deserting Berger's. He even approached the distressed President Commandant during the retreat at Steelport River, 18 miles from Sekukuni's town, and proposed that he should be permitted to establish forts on the frontier and harass Sekukuni during the spring and summer to prevent him acquiring the food supplies with which to conduct a second campaign. Berger's agreed. It seemed like a good plan. And so, in August 1876, the president arranged to establish and man 2 forts, and thus the Steelport Fort, afterwards called Fort Berger's, was built, and von Schickelmann placed at command. It overlooked a plain hemmed in by mountains on the right and the spurs of the Lulu Hills on the left, and by the towering height of Mount Monroe. The plain narrowed between the enclosing ranges. The outlook, in certain lights, was gloomy, even terrible. As Aylward, the Irish renegade, put it, "Through the port or pass, winding in and out amongst rocks, under fearful precipices, through heavy clumps of thorny bush, ran a small footpath that led slowly upwards into a fertile valley, over which frowned the stronghold of Umsut, the most notorious of the robber chiefs that fought for Sekukuni. Hereabouts were crags and scarped walls of granite and porphyry glittering grandly in the sun." From his bold little 6-cornered fort in this magnificent country, von Schickelmann and his garrison constantly raided Sekukuni and Umsut, popping up in countless spots, intimidating them, but containing them effectually within their own lands. His adventures challenged the most improbable fiction. He was the apotheosis of daring, holding his life as cheaply as straw. But he was killed within 3 months. He left the fort in the darkness of the early morning of Friday, November the 17th, 1876, to attack a native village in the hills. He intended also to seize the cattle. his little force pushed on from the bottom of the gully through a glen. The stillness was profound. Lofty escarpments shut them in. Suddenly, a rifle went off by accident. Instantly, a sentry's shrill scream. Shrill. Suddenly, what? I can't read. Excuse me, I'll start again. Suddenly, a rifle went off by accident. Instantly, a sentry's shrill scream rang out from the high ledge of rock. The wild blowing of horns and the drum beating of vedettes echoed eerily in the dark ravines. It was followed in the greying dawn by rolling rifle fire from caves and crags. The detachment advanced boldly from point to point. It rushed the entrance to a village blocked by tree branches. 2 Englishmen, Shepherd and Gilbert, pulled away the obstruction and leapt through. They fell, dangerously wounded. The enemy retired far up the defile, taking cover behind the rocks. Von Schickelmann lit a cigarette, drew his sword, and springing onto a rock, cried, "Leidenburg volunteers, follow me!" Suddenly, as his men rushed up, a heavy bullet, set to weigh 1/4 pound, struck him, tearing away a portion of the liver and the backbone. Soon after, the attackers retreated. The men carried the dying von Schickelmann and other wounded back towards the fort. On the top of the rise, within sight of the fort, they lowered the stretcher. The Prussian put his arms around the neck of Surgeon Ashton. "Tell the President," he gasped, "I was faithful to the last." And thus died a gallant man. Aylward now became commandant. He seems to have kept his unruly force of 160 men in fair control, although now and then they drank to excess. He tells a story of one of his patrolmen who became drunk in a wild spot under the very eyes of the enemy. They were astonished at his antics, especially when, thrown down at last from his horse, which stood faithfully by, he lay down, pointing his rifle this way and that, and then finally fell asleep. They may have looked at him as devil-possessed, or as a decoy. At any rate, they left him alone. On another occasion, the garrison had had no liquor for 3 months. Information reached them that a cask of liquor was on its way. Constantly they watched from afar for signs of the commissariat convoy. Days passed. It did not come. At last, wagons and escort were sighted, and all joyfully repaired to the canteen tent. The cask was offloaded and a tap inserted. The thirsty soldiery stood eagerly about. The tap was turned on, and to the horror of all, the cask was found out to contain ginger beer. The mistake all but led to mutiny. The garrison continued to sally forth. Columns of black smoke on the mountains, the warning signals of the tribesmen, testified to the frequency of the raids. But the diggers on the Leidenburg goldfields began to fear reprisal and roundly cursed Aylward and his garrisons. They complained to the British authorities in Natal and the Cape. They spoke of ever-growing native disorder. The press took matters up. Colour was lent to their allegations by the restiveness of Cetewayo, attributed widely by the British to the failure of the Republican Transvaal to keep the tribesmen in order. And so, Sir Theophilus Shepstone, that mastermind in native mentality, whose name today has overpowering significance among the Zulus, came over the border from Natal to examine this matter of native lawlessness in the Transvaal, which, he said, might end in a bloody Zulu invasion, not only of the Transvaal, but also of Natal. And satisfied that the Republic was bankrupt, there was 3 6 in the treasury, and at the mercy of Cetwayo and his allies, he annexed the Transvaal in the name of Queen Victoria, and he ran up the British flag in Pretoria. The Transvaal was proclaimed British territory on April the 12th, 1877. In the Raad at Pretoria, burghers, broken-hearted at the turn of events, attacked his fellow countrymen. These, advised by Paul Kruger, had for some time refused to pay taxes. "You have sold the Republic for a song," said burghers. "Today a bill for £1,100 was laid before me for signature, but I would sooner have cut off my right hand than sign it, for I have not the slightest reason to expect that when the bill becomes due, there will be a penny to pay it with." He then withdrew, retired from public life, and died in the Cape. Paul Kruger, who had fought against the authority of burghers, his railways, and his taxes, indeed had contributed heavily to the difficulties. Kruger became a fierce opponent of the annexation and, through the clouds of confusion which gradually enveloped South Africa, stood forth as a powerful figure, implacably resolved to fight for a Dutch South Africa. He went to England with Dr. E.F.P. Jorrison, State Attorney, in 1877 to try to get the annexation revoked, but returned unsuccessful. He stumped the Transvaal. The Boers whom he addressed were mainly unlettered. Years of political unrest had kept them ignorant and superstitious. He swayed them to his will. They saw with his eyes. His power among them waxed great. A story is told of Boer credulity, which in the circumstances is significant. A certain farmer and his wife on the banks of the Little Tegula had been terrorized by strange visitations. Showers of stones, vegetables, oranges, and pomegranates had flooded on their roof and inside their house in the dead of night. Sympathetic Republicans agreed to help them. They divided themselves into 2 parties, one keeping guard outside in the moonlight to see that nothing escaped from the house or went into it, not even a field mouse, while the rest of them went inside to exorcise the demons. Among the exorcists was an Irish ex-soldier named McCormick, who was determined not to leave the place until the spirits had been driven forth. Sitting around the table, a shower of onions and pomegranates came suddenly through the roof and fell onto the floor. McCormick now stood up and in fluent Erse violently exhorted the demons to depart. In the thick of his oration, something dropped on his head and forced him down. It was enough. The exorcists leapt to their feet, rushed from the house to their horses, and, ignoring the awe-stricken farmer guards, galloped away. The guards, not certain what might now emerge from the darksome house, also bolted and left the place to its fate. Stories of this kind were the currency of the countryside. In those days, it was said that a big proportion of the population could neither read nor write, and that the Bible was the only book on the farms. Paul Kruger continued to go about, however, condemning the annexation. All that he said was believed. He quickly strengthened Dutch opinion, already fairly strong, against British interference, and thus he set the political field for war. Well. Okay, that's enough for today. He really does paint a very, very strange picture of the sort of circumstances that existed in South Africa among the different races. It seems that there wasn't a lot of will or even thought of people getting along. It seemed that fighting was just the natural way of things, which is so strange to me. Like 100 years later, it seems like centuries and centuries and centuries ago. But no. Anyway. All right, so that was that for today. Roger, are you ready to take over and get us onto the next story?
Yeah, sure. I got it ready,
Awesome.
and hopefully I can read it. It looks good so far.
Good so far.
Yeah.
Who's it by this time?
It's The Men from Mars by John Houseman, December 1948.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
it's out of, and like you said earlier, it's out of Gentlemen, Scholars, and Scoundrels. And this is a collection of Harper's Magazine short stories. So I'll just go ahead and start it off.
Absolutely. Cool.
Okay, here is the fascinating behind-the-scenes story of the 1938 CBS radio dramatization of H.G. Wells' novel, The War of the Worlds, which panicked the country. John Houseman was co-founder with Orson Welles of the Mercury Theater, which put on the show. Mr. Houseman was born in Romania in 1902, educated in England, and came to the United States in 1925. He has produced many movies and Broadway plays. Has been a director, writer, and teacher. Recently, he has been artistic director of the American Shakespeare Festival at Stratford, Connecticut. Radio war terrorizes U.S. New York Daily News, October 31st, 1938. Everybody was excited. I felt as if I was going crazy and kept on saying, what can we do? What difference does it make whether we die sooner or later? We were holding each other. Everything seemed unimportant in the face of death. I switched the page. In the face of death, I was afraid to die. Just keep on listening. That's from a listener. Nothing about the broadcast was in the least credible. Dorothy Thompson. The show came off. There is no doubt about that. It set out to dramatize in terms of popular apprehension an attempted invasion of our world by hostile forces from the planet Mars. It succeeded. Of the several million American citizens who, on the evening of October the 30th, 1938, milled about the streets, clung sobbing to one another, or drove wildly in all directions to avoid asphyxiation in flaming death. Approximately one half were in terror of Martians, not of Germans, Japanese, or unknown enemies, but specifically of Martians. Later, when the excitement was over and the shadow of the gallows had lifted, some of us were inclined to take credit for more deliberate and premeditated villainy than we deserved. The truth is that at the time, nobody was more surprised than we were. In fact, one of the most remarkable things about the broadcast was the quiet, haphazard nature of its birth. In October 1938, the Mercury Theater, of which Orson Welles and I were the founding partners, had been in existence for less than a year. Our first Broadway season had been shatteringly successful. Julius Caesar, The Cradle, Will Rock, Schumacher's Holiday, and Heartbreak House, in the order of their appearances. In April, Orson, in a straggly white beard, made the cover of Time magazine. In June, the Columbia Broadcasting System offered him a radio show, The Mercury Theater on the Air, a series of classic dramatizations in the first-person singular with Orson as master of ceremonies, star, narrator, writer, director, and producer. He accepted. So now, in addition to an empty theater, a movie in progress, 2 plays in rehearsal, and all 7 of the chronicle plays of William Shakespeare in preparation, we had a radio show. We opened on July the 11th. Among our first 13 shows were Treasure Island, 39 Steps, Abraham Lincoln, 3 short stories by Suki Sherwood Anderson and Carl Ewald. Jane Eyre, Julius Caesar, was running commentary by Colton Bourne out of Plutarch, and the man who was Thursday, our second series in the full, began with Booth Tarkington's 17. Around the World in 80 Days in Oliver Twist. Our 5th show was to be Life with Father. Our 4th was The War of the Worlds. No one, as I remember, was very enthusiastic about it, but it seemed good programming between the terrors of Dickens, London slums and the charm of Clarence Day's New York in the 90s to throw in something of a contrasting and pseudo-scientific nature. We thought of Schill's Purple Cloud, Conan Doyle's Lost World, and several others before we settled on H.G. Wells' 20-year-old novel, which neither of us, as it turned out later, remembered at all clearly. It is just possible that neither of us had ever read it. These were our golden days of unsponsored radio. We had no advertising agencies to harass us, no client to cut our withers, partly because we were perpetually overworked, and partly because that was the way we did things at the Mercury. We never seemed to get more than a single jump ahead of ourselves. Shows were created week after week under conditions of soul and health destroying pressure. On the whole, they were good shows, and we did develop a system of sorts. It worked as follows. I was editor of the series with Wells. I chose the show and then laid them out. The writing, most of it was done by Howard Kosh, Ernest Spindley, 6'2", a Westchester lawyer turned playwright. To write the first draft of an hour's radio script took him about 5 days, working about 15 hours a day. Our associate producer was Paul Stewart, a Broadway actor turned director. His function was to put the broadcast through its first paces and parliamentary rehearsals. Every Thursday, musicless and with rudimentary sound effects, a wax record of the show was cut. From this record, played back later that night, Orson would give us his reactions and revisions. In the next 36 hours, the script would be reshaped and rewritten, sometimes drastically. Saturday afternoon, there was another rehearsal with sound, with or without Wells. It was not until the last day that Orson really took over. Sunday at 8, we went on the air, beginning in the early afternoon, when Bernard Herrmann arrived with his orchestra of 27 high-grade symphony players. 2 simultaneous dramas were regularly unfolded in the stale, tense air of Studio Number 1. The minor drama of the current show and the major drama of Orson's gargantuan struggle to get it on. Sweating, howling, disheveled, and single-handed, he wrestled with chaos and time, always conveying an effect of being alone, traduced by his collaborators, surrounded by treachery, ignorance, sloth, indifference, incompetence, and, more often than not, downright sabotage. Every Sunday it was touch and go. as the hands of the clock moved relentlessly towards airtime. The crisis grew more extreme, the peril more desperate. Often violence broke out. Scripts flew through the air. Doors were slammed. Buttons smashed. Scheduled for 6, but usually near 7. There was a dress rehearsal, a thing of wild improvisation and irrevocable disaster. One show was found to be 21 minutes over length, another 14 and 1/2 minutes short, and 1/2 minutes short. After that, with only a few minutes to go, there was a final frenzy of correction and reparation, of utter confusion and absolute horror, aggravated by the gobbling of sandwiches and the bolting of oversized milkshakes. By now, it was less than a minute to airtime. At that instant, quite regularly, week after week, with not 1 second to spare, the titanic buffoonery stopped. Suddenly, out of the chaos, the show emerged, delicately poised, meticulously executed, precise as clockwork and smooth with satin. And above us all, like a rainbow over storm clouds, stood Orson on his podium, sonorous and heroic, a leader of men surrounded by his band of loyal followers, a giant in action, serene and radiant with the joy of a hand battle bravely fought. A great victory snatched from the jaws of disaster. In later years, when the men from Mars had passed into history, there was some bickering among members of the Mercury as to who exactly had contributed precisely what to the particular evening's entertainment. The truth is that a number of us made a number of essential and incalculable contributions to the broadcast. Who can accurately assess, for instance, the part played by Johnny Dance's perfect engineering in keeping unbroken and shifting illusion of imperfect reality? How much did the original old H.G. Wells, who noisily repudiated us, have to do with it? Or the second assistant sound man, or individual actors, or Dr. Goebbels, or Charlie McCarthy? Orson Welles had virtually nothing to do with the writing of the script, and less than usual to do with the preliminary rehearsals. Yet, first and last, it was his creation. If there had been a lynching that night, it was Wells the outraged populace would have strung up, and rightly so. Orson was the Mercury, the war of the world, or the war of the worlds. Like everything we did was his show. Actually, it was a narrow squeak. Those men from Mars barely escaped being stillborn. Tuesday afternoon, 5 days before the show, Howard Koch telephoned. He was in deep distress After 3 days of slaving on H.G. Wells' scientific fantasy, he was ready to give up. Under no circumstances, he declared, could it be made interesting or in any way credible to modern Americans' ears. Koch was not given to the habitual alarmism. To confirm his fears, Annie, our secretary, came to the phone. She was an acid and emphatic girl who Smith College was fine. No, girl from Smith College with fine blonde hair who smelled of fading spring flowers. You can't do it, she whined. Those old Martians are just a lot of nonsense. It's all too silly. We're going to make fools of ourselves, absolute fools. For some reason which I do not clearly remember, our only possible alternative for that week was a dreary one. Lorna Doone. I tried to reach Wells. He was at the theater and wouldn't come to the phone. The reason he wouldn't come to the phone was that he was in his 36th successive hour of dress rehearsing. Danton's Death, a beautiful fragmentary play by George Bluchner, out of which Max Reinhardt, in an augmented form, had made a successful mass spectacle in the 20s. Okay. Not to be outdone, Orson had glued 1,700 masks on to the back wall of the Mercury Theater and rip out the entire stage. Day after day, actors fell headlong into the rat-ridden basement, leaped on and off erratically moving elevators, and chanted the Carmagnoli in chorus under the supervision of Mark Blightstein. Unable to reach Wells, I called Koch back. I was severe. I taxed him with defeatism. I gave him false comfort. I promised to come up and help. When I finally got there, around 2 the next morning, things were better. He was beginning to have fun, laying waste the state of New Jersey. Annie had stopped grinding her teeth. We worked all night and through the next day. Wednesday at sunset, the script was finished. Thursday, as usual, Paul Stewart rehearsed the show, then made a record. We listened to it rather gloomily long after midnight in Orson's room at the St. Regis, sitting on the floor because all the chairs were covered with coils of unrolled and unedited film. We agreed it was a dull show. We all felt its only chance of coming off lay in emphasizing its newscast style, its simultaneous eyewitness quality. All might no, All Might, we sat up, spicing the script with circumstantial allusions and eustatic details. Friday afternoon, we went over to CBS to be passed by the network censor. Certain name alterations were requested. Under protest and with a deep sense of grievance, we changed the Hotel Baltimore to the non-existent Park Plaza Transamerica to intercontinent, the Columbian Broadcasting Building to Broadcasting Building. Then the script went over to mimeograph and we went to bed. We had done our best, and after all, a show is just a show. Saturday afternoon, Paul Stewart rehearsed with second effects, but without Wells. He worked for a long time on the crowd scenes, the roar of cannons echoing in Watchung Hills, and the sound of New York Harbor as the ships with the last remaining survivors put out to sea. Around 6, we left the studio, Orson phoning from the theater a few minutes later to find out how things were going. We was told by one of the CBS sound men who had stayed behind to pack up his equipment that it was not one of our better shows. Confidentially, the man opined it just didn't come off. 27 hours later, quite a few of his employers would have found themselves a good deal happier if he had turned out to be right. And right there is probably the best place to go ahead and end it. You got all that, didn't you?
How amazing. I did. How amazing. What an incredible backstory. And isn't it lovely with what we do putting on shows to sort of think how it was sort of like, I don't know, 60 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can sort of pull this off with 3 or 4 of us nowadays.
It's amazing.
I mean, how long does it take us to write a script?
Yeah.
10 or 20 minutes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that we're all set up. Yeah. What a fun thing. And to think that they thought that it was all going to be a big flop.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the most amazing part about it. Like they honestly thought that this was going to just not going to work for them. It was going to be a disaster. Well, kind of was, but not in the way they thought.
Not in the way they thought. It's never happened again. I mean, that was it's been a one-off.
Yeah.
That people have taken a radio show. It's interesting how much people want there to be aliens, that they're prepared to have this sort of suspension of disbelief when it comes to aliens. You know, there's got to be aliens. We can't be alone, and they're going to come and get us.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing. Yeah.
They ended up flipping out. They thought that like these Martians were actually invading, and I find that interesting. You know what I mean? Because we're supposed to be a society of rational people.
Yes.
And then back then, you know, of course, the only thing they had was radio, but they fell for it hook, line, and sinker.
Interesting, the parallel from this book that I've just read, where that they bought into this Paul Kruger's story about how the British were so bad and had to get rid of the British.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's when people want to believe something, they will believe it. I mean, I don't know, the British did some bad things, but the way it comes across in this book, there was a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of misrepresentation. Okay, taking all the diamonds, I think, was a really poor show. That's obviously would have made the local people very, very upset for an imperial power to just come in and take everything away. But there was also a lot of superstition and a lot of ill will from person to person. So I don't know if we actually are a rational species.
Mm-hmm.
We try for rationality, but I feel in a pinch we don't succeed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like when it comes to like Kruger though, like Kruger was a pretty dastardly guy though. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, they don't realize how bad that guy was. Like he was a
No.
horrible man. He really
Well,
was.
he was very, very narrow-minded and completely uneducated and very biased.
Oh, violent
And
too.
yeah, and violent. But he was also very charismatic. And he could just get people involved in a story and carry them along. And so people felt that he was great, you know, being in his presence made you think that he was, apparently,
Yeah.
he was a great guy.
Well, except for England, of
Strange.
course. England didn't.
They
They didn't
kind
buy
of saw
into that.
through it. Yeah, yeah. Well, they were much more educated. They were much more educated. The British were the more educated, and the Boers were the sort of uneducated, the peasant people. And often, had they left where they were, they'd left the Netherlands, and the people had left Europe because they were in terrible poverty there.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't the wealthy people that were leaving. It was the very poor, the uneducated, the underprivileged, the ones who had terrible lives, who were there, you know, trying to make a go of it on this new continent.
Well, I said it to Mark before. I was like, you know, I mean, it was a time of high adventure to these people. When they were going to
Yes.
Africa, it was to conquer a land that they had never been before. It wasn't about trying to settle. It was them against nature. It was them against the wild.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes.
they,
And it was so preferable to dying in a slum in Europe.
right,
You know.
right.
Oh.
You know, trudging through the jungles of the Congo. You know what I mean? That's it. That was like comic books to us today, or Indiana Jones. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And going wildlife hunting and killing buck and killing lions, and it was very
fighting,
glamorous and adventurous.
fighting crocodiles like Tarzan. You know.
Like Tarzan, indeed.
I believe they had a TV series about that, didn't they? About Tarzan.
Tarzan, yes, but he didn't fight crocodiles. I don't think that's Steve Irwin.
I bet you anything he fought a crocodile. My grandpa loved that movie or that show. I'm pretty sure he did.
He fought a crocodile.
Yeah, for his woman. What was her name? Tarzan.
Jane.
Jane. Yes, he had to save Jane, and he jumped in the water and he fought him.
Really? And he fought a crocodile? Oh, what fun! Oh, what fun! Well, Roger, thank you very much indeed for joining me again today. That was great fun. I'm really, really enjoying this. And we're starting a new show on Thursday, are we?
Yeah, it's going to be called Earth, and it's just going to be about planting, growing, things of that nature. Nothing serious. Awesome. It's all natural.
How cool. Awesome.